Gracious, good morning. This is our recap for Decision 3 for the Diamond Universe. It's going to be a very short one because it's very, very clear what happened. Let me share my screen and we'll get started. Boom, here we are. We're going to jump around with some jump cuts today because there's just a few things we need to look at. This very first shows what happened very, very clearly in the eco line, where blue kind of crashed and burned with eco, and also even number two with image, but also had a problem with low cost and family. The major problem that blue team had, as you can see up in cash here, is 19,000. This means they had to get a government loan. So what happened is in eco, blue went all in for eco and did a great job with revenues and marketing, etc., but completely over invested for the capacity. They blew out the doors on the number of models and all that to really go for it in eco, but then did not do the kind of capex and production it would take to make all those models. So their lost inventory was absolutely huge. So every time, and we've made tons and tons of videos about this now in slides, and that if you're going to really go all in for a line, you got to make sure you can produce them, because if you have a mismatch between your orders and sales, and the U.S. sales means deliveries, you got all those orders and you can't deliver them, you're going to find your inventories down to zero. So that's really the big story this time. Yellow and red have done fine, but what's very strange, I've never seen in a universe like this before, is on the major indicators right here, you can see that yellow team's almost all number one, red's almost all number two, and blue's almost all number three in all the indicators, which is very, very rare. Usually it's spread around. There's only one exception, which is morale. And that ties a lot to how well you're doing. So to be number one or number two in that. So this is really a clear difference. And the differences here, the ultimate you can get, the highest you can get is the six, where you're number one in all six major indicators, and the lowest you can get is number three in all six indicators. So the distance between yellow and blue is greater than I've ever seen before. Blue was 18, and we were at six last time. So it almost has the ultimate extreme between one and three here, with red not doing badly. They're kind of in the middle there. So of course blue did well in image. I think they came in number two in image. We'll look at that. But so this is just absolutely a record in terms of the disparity between the teams. And here's the major story right here is when you look at the eco line and especially focus on blue, you can see what happened here very clearly without even looking at the LOIs. Now remember, lost orders over inventory is our major indicator for EBIT and financial returns and results. And in this case, it's very, very clear that eco absolutely destroyed blue. And why? They made a huge investment in engineering, um, huge appeal, huge marketing dollars spent, to the extent that they had to take out a loan. Their cash was crushed, and they got a government loan also. So their leverage went up from 33% to almost 50% debt to equity. And then on top of that, after all of this investment, you'll see this is usually in the 90s, 25%. They drove huge demand, 161 units, and did not produce anything close to that. Their capacity was only 50 units. They had one third the capacity, and that's about one third, 25 to 30%, resulting sales versus demand or lost overs over inventory. So all the cash got completely burned up, driving a huge amount of demand they couldn't deliver, because CapEx is driven mostly by the biggest two things that drive CapEx: the need for CapEx and capital investment and capital allocation. The two biggest sliders are on your capacity are consumption and miles and range. So you look at the sliders down here, consumption, which is fuel efficiency, which is important, eco, is really high, and models in range is 8. I've never seen that many models made before. Novelty is 6. So these are huge, huge slider investments, not just in marketing and making marketing and engineering excellent for this line, but with a corresponding CapEx requirement for capacity and capital investment. And on the website, you'll see these numbers on the website, and also comparison with last universe's switch from yellow to red to blue. There's another kind of ranking there to show don't lose hope, because you could still become in decision 4 and 5. You can still get up to number 2 and number 1. It's anything goes. It's kind of the theme of this is anything goes. But you can really see what happened here in terms of the doing high sliders, but not making up for it in investing in CapEx. And that formula is also on the website that shows you how you must calculate that demand. If you're going to get a demand of 161 in a line where you've got units prices in the 60s, you're going to have depreciation at 1,000 and maybe 7, 8, 9,000 you're going to need in terms of capacity. So, and production. And there's a formula there that basically says your old demand versus your new demand times your CapEx minus depreciation. So that formula is on the website under the sliders and all the other graphics that relate to how you relate your supply to your demand and your capacity. So that's really what happened to Blue. And these financials clearly show where the crash and burn is. So all it really remains is to take a little look at LOI. So here's our LOI for low cost. And we can see in it, but you can see how much this reflects EBIT, because in low cost was the second biggest area where Blue really died, and they built a huge amount of inventory here. Closer you are to zero, the better off you are. So yellow and red are not too bad, although red you can see was losing in low cost, was losing had some lost orders. They were working towards staying at the 0 point, but they overshot it a little bit and didn't build enough capacity in low cost. In family, where you see yellow actually kind of came into the positive territory, which you see our cash cow, and then red and blue both started to move towards zero. The trend is in the right way, but red still has an inventory problem, and blue still has a lost orders problem. And what's so fascinating is that you can see their distance from zero is almost the same. And so what red lost in having too much inventory and what blue lost in not having enough inventory to fulfill sales had their EBITs exactly equal. So yellow is a little bit positive because they're right close to the zero line matching supply and demand, whereas both red and blue are underwater exactly the same amount in EBIT. So you can see this isn't even an EBIT measure. It's just your sales versus your orders. And yet, look at how closely your financials track the matching of the supply and demand. That's a huge, huge lesson in capital allocation in this model. And now here's the big one, the one that we should expect to see something shocking in blue, because blue crashed and burned. And sure enough, these two aren't too bad. They've got some excess inventory in eco, but if they were on zero down here, they'd probably be both somewhat positive, and then the rest has got to do with marketing and sales. But they're not too bad. They're neck and neck, yellow and red, in terms of EBIT. And yet, that's the whole story here. You invest a huge amount of money in marketing and in engineering to really make a home run in eco, and you will, selling 160 units, and yet you can't deliver them because you did not create the capacity in the plant, ran out of cash, and so the financials also tank along with the EBIT. Finally, image is a really interesting story because everyone sort of got closer to zero but positive, but we see lost orders in both blue and yellow. And yet, so yellow is actually the worst in terms of EBIT of the three teams in image, yet they're all still positive because the financials and the sales and the margins, because of the price being higher, have a little more room. When you have a little more margins, you have a little more room for error. And so all three are positive. Red is number one, blue is number two, and yellow is number three. So you can see as that pretty much matches where we are in excess inventory versus lost orders. So not you can see one isn't any better than the other. Although red is they're winning here because look how close to zero they've gotten. They've really stabilized the phase of the sine curve. So we could keep on going straight here towards zero, and and yellow stops the burn by building a little capacity in image here. Not a lot. Image is now becoming sort of the dog and the cash cow as we get to decision 4 and 5. But at least enough if you're going to keep building some demand and making some good margins and making your numbers work. And I can't lecture yellow. They're doing great. They've stabilized their number one position and they're hanging on to it. So that's really it for lost orders over inventory and our whole story. So boom, we're back. That's it. Very short recap this time. Go to the visuals and check out. I've got the financials for all four lines for all three teams are up, which is everyone's favorite. And you can look at your financials and help work for your second to last decision. These are 4 and 5. 5 is really easy because there's some tricks you can use. You've got to watch the video because there will be no period 6, which means you don't have to worry as much about CapEx and production for the next period. But 4 you do. 4 is where make or break. Lots of points involved, so it's an important decision. Have any questions, make sure you text me, message me. Validators, thank you very much for catching up on validation this cycle. Really appreciate it. And I will see you next time.